Hey, welcome back to Carlo Prusa MMA. As always, I'm your host, Carlo Prusa, and I have a fighter on here today, a friend of the show, 5
Yes,
and
sir.
0 professional fighter. He's back in action Friday night in Savannah, Georgia. He's taking on Taylor Morre, headlining Conflict MMA's card, Mr. The Machine,
Yes,
Malcom
sir.
Wellmaker. Malcolm, what's going on, man?
Same old man. At this point, going through the fight week motions, dieting, getting ready for the cut. But I'm excited, man. It's a big opportunity for me, man. And my camps always, they progress, they get better and better. And this one was legit. We trained for a 5 round fight, 5 round war, and I feel incredible, man.
So you're taking on Taylor Morre on Friday. How did this opportunity come about? How did you get to fight in Savannah again?
Yeah, man. So Jared Williams, man, the guy that runs Conflict MMA. I fought for them plenty. I was their amateur 135 champ. He actually gave me my very first fight opportunity, kickboxing opportunity back in 2017. So, we've been working with Jared a lot. And after my last fight, he was putting together this card in Savannah. And right after that fight, he was the first one to approach us with another offer. And this offer in particular, Taylor Morre, a really good guy that checks all the boxes for what we're looking for in the next opponent and climbing our way up. So he hit us with that offer. We ran it by my manager, Jason House, man, and we all got on board and started getting ready for war.
You know, your opponent, Taylor Morre, has been on the Contender Series. This guy with a lot of fights, has a lot of experience. When you're fighting a guy that's fought on the Contender Series, a big show like that, does that give you extra motivation? And, maybe the mentality of, hey, I can beat him, I can get there too.
Absolutely, man. Like that's the whole, process of what we're trying to do. We're hunting bigger and bigger game every fight. And my last guy, he had fought Junior Cortez before, beat him in a split decision, so we knew it would be a legit fight. And then, we stepped up this time to a guy with much more experience and had fought on a big stage like the Contender Series in front of Dana. And every time we take on a bigger challenge, man, it puts that fire up under me because I know, like, if I go out here and I dominate this guy, I finish him in a brutal fashion, man, it makes a statement. And I think I'll be letting the guys know I'm ready for the next level.
One of the things I think is really interesting with you is, yeah, you're young in your pro career. You're a 5 and 0 fighter. However, you are 28 and you've had almost 10 amateur contests. I mean, you've had a lot of fights. You've been doing this
That's
for a
right.
while. The fact that you guys took a while to turn you pro, do you think that has bettered you? Do you think that experience of all those fights as an amateur are helping now in the pro scene?
Absolutely, man. Because I honestly feel like up until like my last maybe 3 or 4 amateur fights, I didn't really face that hard competition and really go the distance with guys that were tough and technical and had, high level partners and high level coaches and an ability to change things on the fly. So those last few fights in my amateur career really prepared me for what I experienced when I went pro. Because even in my very first pro fight, uh, that guy was a dog, man, and I couldn't knock him out for anything, and it was real adversity. It pushed the cardio, but I was able to draw back on the experience I had in the high level amateurs to be able to do what I did. And first year of fighting pro, I fought 5 times. So like even though it was delayed, I got active and I got a lot of fights under my belt quickly. So it was very good for me, very good.
Last time we talked, one of the things you told me, the reason why it took a while for you to switch to pro is you said that your coaches wanted you to be a point where you had no gaps in your game. You were good at all different elements. And it is evident in your fighting. You're dangerous on the ground. You're lethal standing up on the feet. How big was that for you? And you think your success here as a pro?
Huge, man. And it's still a big thing because I've got 2 knockouts and I've got 2 rear naked choke finishes. And I think sometimes there will be people I won't be able to get out of there on the feet. I have to get them out of there on the ground. So like having a high finish rate, being an entertaining fighter, being able to get them out of there and not go to the judges is one of the biggest things I pride myself on. And so as long as I have tools everywhere the fight goes, that can finish a fight, it makes me the fighter I want to be. And even with the one guy that I didn't finish, it was just because I didn't quite have the level on the ground that I wanted to be able to finish him. But as always, we worked on it, and with Taylor Morre, man, whether I take him out on the feet or the ground, it doesn't matter. But I'm not there to let it go to the judges. I'm there to finish that fight.
Now, your last time in action, you took on Justin Hughes, picked up a huge victory in the first round, nasty KO, take KO finish. The striking looked extremely crisp. Walk me through that finish. What were you seeing? And going into the contest, did you expect this to maybe be able to end on the feet like that?
Wow, man, it was so at the weigh-ins when we faced off, they put the mic in front of him and asked him, how he felt and what he came to do. And he was like, I came here to slang these MFers, and so like I actually went into the fight and I was expecting him to just like stand his ground and just like throw hard hands. And he actually came out and he did a lot of movement, a lot of changing distance and angles and put a lot of things in front of me to react to, switching stances and all. And so it was a little bit different than I expected. But honestly, man, I think after maybe like 60 seconds of moving around with him and putting feints out there, I knew he didn't have enough on the feet to be able to keep me out of there. So I put a couple things in front of him. I opened up one time, I touched him a couple times, and immediately after is when I hit him with that lead hook. And I just knew I knew his stand-up game just wasn't at a level to compete with mine after moving around with him for a second. So a little bit different than I expected, but very happy with the way it went.
Your striking is just so crisp. It's so flawless. I mean, is striking always something? Did you take to that right away? Is that something you've had to work on and develop, or were you able to have luck on it, right when you started doing the sport?
Yeah, I was lucky, man. I was drawn to the striking. I admired the strikers in the game when I first joined the MMA scene. And it was the thing that I focused on most, obsessed with most. And I would go to sleep watching fights over and over, just watching these, counter shots and these great boxers, great MMA fighter strikers and stuff like that. So it was something that I fell in love with. And I think that's why I learned to do all these things that I admire. And even when I entered MMA, I avoided wrestling for a long time. Like I hated it, man. I hated it. And I relied on my striking. But like I think that obsession with the striking that I had, that love and admiration I had for it is why I ended up, being able to get the skills that I have with it.
I've told this to multiple people. When I look at you and I look at your striking, there's one guy that comes to my mind, and it's Conor McGregor. I
Yeah,
see a
man.
lot of similarities in it. Connor is a guy who talks about movement is key to his striking. And I can see that with you. I can see the movements in the way you throw your shots. I mean, it's beautiful. It's like an art form. Is McGregor, is that someone that you look up to in the striking department? Do you emulate your game off of him at all?
That is so funny that you said that, man, because look, when I first joined the MMA gym, prior to that, I had no knowledge of like what was going on in the MMA, scene. But it was right after Conor McGregor lost to Nate Diaz and he was going for the rematch. And so all the time people talking about Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz, I had no idea who the guys were. And so they was like, bro, go watch some Conor McGregor tonight, bro. I don't even remember what fight I watched, but I went back and watched one of his fights that night and I was hooked. And like Conor McGregor's fights for the next 6 months, I went to sleep and just passed out watching them over and over and over. And like I was just like obsessed with the stance, like his energy, his mentality, the counter shots, man. Like it's beautiful striking. So I would say legitimately for like the first 3-4 years of my career, he was the one athlete that I was obsessed with. Like I got a poster of him on my wall, you know what I mean? So like yeah, I was obsessed with him, and he probably, I would say, influenced my striking more than anybody else. And then as I became more versed in the sport, obviously I started learning about more people and picking up different techniques. But even still to this day, man, like, featherweight McGregor, man, I go back and I watch those fights, and every fight week, man, I just get the chills watching those things, man.
Let's switch back over to Taylor Morre a little bit. So if getting into action, came back in the cage on Friday. What do you think of him as an opponent? Do you think he's a pretty game opponent for you?
Absolutely, man. So first and foremost, the experience is something that is by far way more that he has than anybody I've ever faced or myself. So I think that's a legitimate thing that I'll have to be keeping in mind. But even as far as like, his skill set, I mean, he's very well rounded. He can strike, he can wrestle, he can grapple. I think that there's no major holes in his game. But I also think that the style of fighting he has is one that works really well with me. Like he fights pace, he fights patiently. He takes his time, and when you give me that kind of opponent and I get to make my setups, I get to put my feints out there, I get to find my shots, that's when I get to do something crazy. So if he comes out and he fights like that, man, it's gonna be awesome. And if he comes out and he does something crazy, you know, he out the gate tries to wrestle really hard or something outlandish like that, I'll be prepared for that as well. But if he does what I'm expecting him to do, which is be patient, technical, and composed, then don't blink, because I'm gonna find that shot, man. I'm put leather on him for sure.
So this isn't your first time fighting in Savannah. You've had some good luck in Savannah. Last
Absolutely.
year, 2 icon fights, one
Mhm.
by a nasty KO, one by a nice submission finish. You think Savannah's going to give you some momentum, some energy? I mean, do you have good juju, I guess, if you would, coming back down this way?
Absolutely, man. It's funny because last year when I went to Savannah, my coach, I call him Pops, he took me to River Street. It was my first time going to River Street, and it was beautiful, man. And bro, we was only in Savannah for like 2.5 days. I went to River Street 3 times, like, because I just loved it. So, you know, we already talked about it. We're going to River Street again. And so, like, I'm gonna get out there. I'm gonna see the Savannah Convention Center where I had those huge nights at. Memories been popping up on my phone from last year, you know, all over and over. Like, I just feel that. I feel that energy. I feel that moment, you know, that greatness, that intensity. And oh man, I get chills just thinking about it. It's gonna happen again, man. I know it's gonna happen again. It's gonna be a magical night on the 14th. And on the 14th was the same date I fought, you know, last year for Icon. So it's only right, man. It's coming. It's coming.
So would it be safe to say after party on River Street sometime Saturday night?
Let's do it. Yeah, absolutely, man. For sure, man. Let's do it, man. Let's get by that water, have a good time, man. Let's do it.
You know, you mentioned Savannah last year on October 14th. We got to go back talking a little bit about your icon fights. Every time I have you on here, I kind of got to bring this up. Your fight against Langston Sykes. What a knockout that was. You hit him with the left. And what was crazy about it, you know, you finish him. I was there. First time I saw you fight. Everyone's freaking out. And you seem like you remain calm out of all this. I mean, if I was you, I'd be freaking out going nuts. And you're calm. You go over, you talk to Jorge. What was that interaction like with you and Jorge? What were you telling him?
Man, so it's almost like I have like outer body experiences in those moments. Like I don't really think about anything; it just happens. And I remember I hopped over the cage, and Langston Sykes is from Miami as well. So I hopped over the cage. I had tucked my mouthpiece in my hip, and I looked at him. I dapped him up. I said, "Jorge, I know he was from Miami too, but I had to do it." He hugged me. He was like, "It's all good, man. I love it." And I told him, I was like, "That was with the left," because like, you know, my right is my power hand, but it was the left. He was like, "Beautiful, man," and man, it was beautiful. Jorge Masvidal, he had an envelope in front of him, bro. He opened that envelope, pulled out $1,000 cash, and gave it to me. Said, "That's a little bonus for doing what you just did." Like, most magical night of my life. It was incredible, man. Literally gave me a cash bonus, like right out of his pocket. Just in the moment, just it was beautiful, man. It was insane. And I didn't even count the money. I didn't know how much he gave me. I just gave it to my coach. You know, I went back in the cage, and when we went back, I was like, "How much did he give me?" He started counting out. He's like, "What's $1,000?" I'm like, $1,000? Like, it was insane, man. It was absolutely insane, man. Incredible. Jorge is amazing. I love him so much.
Wait, so Jorge gave you the cash right after you knocked the guy out? Like literally with
Yeah,
no shirt on, just gave it to you?
yeah, that wasn't even my fight purse. It was just money. Like, it was like he was just so excited that he just pulled out this envelope, pulled out cash, and was like, "Here." And I was like, you know what I mean? I didn't know what was going on, bro. And like, even when I fight, man, like I get into like this different mode. And so like, that's where that lack of excitement comes from. I'm like, you know, in that moment. So like all this stuff is happening. And then like, when I got to the back, I started processing everything. And I was like, man, I think my life has just changed. You know what I mean? So, and it did, man. My career skyrocketed after that performance. It really did.
Now, obviously, Jorge Masvidal has played a part in your career. Are there any other professional former UFC guys, bigger name guys of the sports that you had the opportunity to work with and you think maybe benefited with you at all?
Honestly, I that's the first. So I walked by Neil Magny in like in a locker room one time at an ex-MMA show. But like actually interacting with a professional, you know, UFC fighter with a real name, that was the very first one I've ever had the opportunity of doing it with. And I haven't had one since. And then on top of that, you know, it's somebody that I admired and I had been watching for a long time. So really, to be completely honest, he's the only person in those shoes that's put his hand on my career. And it made a huge difference for me. I even think that's how Jason House ended up finding me, after what I did for Icon. So man, he changed my life. He really did.
I think it's crazy now that I've been covering some of the Masvidal's events, sort of being the bare knuckle stuff, the icon stuff. And even with me, I'm just like you, trying to achieve my dreams, doing what I need to do to get to that next level. And it's like, this guy is giving me so many opportunities. You can see it with the guys that he has on his shows. I mean, he cares about them. He goes out of his way to help them. And
Yeah.
I just think it's truly amazing. I mean, do you find inspiration off of that?
Absolutely, man. Even before I fought for him, I remember him walking into the place where we were having the weigh-ins, and he saw me. He pointed at me. He walked over to me. He was like, "Hey, what's up, man? Me and Dean been talking about you." And at this point, I had done nothing for him, and it was like he just made me feel like he just wasn't so far above me, like the way I perceive him. And every time I've ever seen him after that, man, like the way he treats you, he embraces you. He's so down to earth, man. He's a real person, and he's a real person that I admire, that has accomplished things that I hope in some capacity I could do. So, man, he just made me feel like my dreams was achievable, and that, like, after the fights, I watched all the interviews he did, man. He brought my name up voluntarily, man. It was incredible, man. He has no idea how much he has inspired me to give my all to this, and how much he's changed my life, my perspective, my mind. He has no idea. When I really get to that level and I get to spend some more time with him, I'll make sure he knows for sure, man. I love him, man.
In this day and age, 2023, we have tons and tons of people watch MMA. They embrace it, they enjoy it between the UFC, all the different promotions. However, I think very few people know what it's like to be in your shoes right now. I mean, obviously, you're not UFC yet. You're making
Yep.
a name for yourself, but you're living a grind, man. You're doing a 40-hour-a-week job. You're training. The money in this, you're not a millionaire. I mean, this
That's
isn't
right.
crazy huge money. It's okay,
That's
but
right.
it's not enough. Um, what is that grind like? And you have your fight this Friday. With that grind, with all that you work, does that give you the motivation to go there and just not be stopped?
Yeah, man. Look, man. I don't work an office job. I'm a pipe fitter. I'm a construction worker, man. I get dirty, man. I swing hammers. I drop my welding hood. I burn rods. It's some days at work, man. It's hard work, and it's difficult to drag myself to the gym. And I train every day, man. I work my 40 hours, sometimes more than that when we got time sensitive jobs, man. And I train every day. Weekends, I train 2-3 times a day when I don't have to work. And sometimes I'm on the job, man, and I'm just like, I'm sick of doing this, man. And it's not because I feel like I'm better than it, but I feel like I have a bigger purpose. I feel like I have potential to do something great, man. And each and every day, man, it's just a reminder that, like, this all is gonna pay off. And recently, this whole camp, man, I got a guy that's an apprentice of mine, but he started coming training with me, so he sees the work firsthand. And I always tell him, man, I'll never forget these days. We do these dirty jobs, we worn out at the end of the day, and I tell him, man, I'll never forget these days putting on these boots, doing all this dirty work, man, because it made me who I am, man. So that grind is hard. It's something that's difficult to understand if you don't do it yourself, and it's a motivating factor, man. I look forward to the day I can put away my work boots and I can just train and fight and live good, man. Live good. I won't drive that F-250 if I don't have to. You know what I'm saying? I'll pick up a Hellcat or something, man. Yeah, man.
What is the end goal for you here? There's no question you're all in. Like, this is all that you want to do. You're going to do what you can to make it happen. But what is the end goal here for Malcom Wellmaker?
It's funny, man. My end goal at first, like, the end goal constantly changes for me, man. At first it was to get in shape. Then I got in shape, and then I got a fight. And then I wanted to get amateur belts, and then I did that. And then, like, my coach was starting to talk about going professional, and I'm like, going professional, it seemed like a huge goal, and I did it. Then I get an opportunity with Jorge Masvidal. So constantly my end goal changes because I start realizing the potential I have. And I think for a long time, my goal was like, I just want to go to the UFC. I want to show the people around me that you can do it, you can change your life, and that you can accomplish something great. But it's become so much more than that now. Like I said, I've met Jorge Masvidal. I've talked a lot to Jason House, who has so much experience in this industry, man. And I want to I want to make it to the UFC. I want to fight the highest level fighters there are out there, but I want to get financial stability for myself, and I want to share that with the people around me, and I want to give back this knowledge, this experience, this all these things that I've learned to make it better for the next generation of fighters coming out of my school. Put, have kids, have a family, and show the whole city of Augusta, man, like we can do great things. Just uplift the level of MMA in my city, man, and bring everybody with me. Like, it hasn't been a UFC fighter out of Augusta since Forrest Griffin, and it's been a long time, man. So like, after I do it, I feel like, everybody's gonna realize it can be done, man. I want Quincy to come behind me, Joel, Terrence, Andrew. We got all these fighters, man, that have potential. And if I do it, I know that I can show them that it can be done, and it'll happen time and time again, man. So my goal really, man, is just uplift everybody around me, mentally, spiritually, the MMA scene in general, and financially, man. We can really live good lives, and I want to show people.
You think a big win against Moore potentially gets you to either Contender Series next year or a bigger show?
100%. 100%. I think if I go out there and I knock him out in brutal fashion, the next phone call I get is a very big opportunity. 100%. Whether it's the UFC or if it's me possibly working my way into a Contender Series, or that next opportunity being, hey, you knock this guy out, we know we got you a UFC contract. Whatever it is, man. This is a big fight for me, and as much as every fight for me is game changing, this one really can change the course of my immediate life after that night. So I'm ready, man. I'm determined. I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna put on a show.
Are you feeling that this is the biggest fight of your career?
Absolutely. No doubt about it. No doubt about it, man. I 100% believe so. You look at the tail of the tape, you look at his name on paper, the fights he's had, the experience he's had. This is the one I need.
All right, last question for you, Malcolm. On a perfect world, what happens Saturday night?
Perfect world, man. What happens Saturday night? I go out there, man. I take my time with him. I find my shot in the first round and I knock him out. Absolutely cold, man. That's perfect night for me, and right after that, I get a phone call. I get a short notice opportunity in the UFC, and I get another knockout and $50,000 bonus. That's down the line, but perfect world, perfect Saturday night, first round, man. I feel him out, and I put my right hand on him, put my left hand on him, and he goes out cold, man. The ref is diving to keep me from doing any more damage, and that's what I'm looking for, man. That's what I'm looking for.
Well, Malcolm, I wish you nothing but the best, my man. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.